Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, holding the key to the White House, we take a look at how women voters will play an important role in the upcoming US presidential elections. And with Hillary Clinton now throwing her hat into the ring, how the female vote could either make or break her. Plus the dangers of being a feminist in China. But first, it's a nation that has less maternity benefits even than Saudi Arabia. Only 75% of its women aged 25 to 54 are in work, compared to an average of 79% in the developed world. And as for the gender pay gap, women there earn some 22% less than men on average. Yes, I'm talking about the United States. And as Shona Bhattacharya reports, regardless of Hillary Clinton, gender issues are set to be front stage in the upcoming US presidential election.
It'll be a major factor in the upcoming presidential election, the women's vote. U.S. women got the right to cast ballots in 1920. They now represent 53% of the electorate, vote in greater numbers than men and more often. The way different candidates view social issues has a large role to play in their decision.
Healthcare and affordable childcare, education, birth control, the environment, those issues tend to be higher up on women's lists of issues that they care about than men's.
Women's rights in the United States lag far behind those in other developed countries. The Constitution still does not explicitly give equal rights to women, despite a 90-year campaign to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Family planning advances like the 1973 Roe v. Wade case that allowed for legal abortions are being challenged in several states, especially those controlled by Republicans. And despite the fact that women earn 60% of all undergraduate and graduate degrees, they are more likely to be in poverty. Yet in a quarter of all U.S. households, women are now the primary breadwinner.
It's because you're seeing women becoming the heads of households in the economic sense. Especially single mothers. These issues are really hitting home, and so I think people are getting tired of the same old, and they want to see some movement on this.
More women have consistently voted Democrat in presidential elections starting in 1992 with Bill Clinton. Now his wife Hillary has announced her candidacy for 2016 in a context where issues pertaining to gender and power are more out in the open.
There's a different discussion now about what's required for women in top jobs, not just in politics, but in private business as well. And I think so there's a different conversation now around gender, I think, in the US. And so I think she can probably tackle it in a different way. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see her tackling it more head on.
Hillary Clinton has a number of hurdles to overcome to get to the White House. Just as Barack Obama's race was not able to reverse centuries of institutionalized racism in the United States, Clinton's gender won't likely be the sole catalyst in improving women's rights in the near future.
Shona Bhattacharya reporting. Now joining me in the studio is Laurie Dundon, a Paris-based fellow at the Truman National Security Project, a policy institute that focuses on both American domestic politics as well as international affairs. Laurie, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Let's start with Hillary Clinton's announcement. Back in 2008, when she was running them for the Democratic presidential nomination, she literally danced around the fact that she is a woman. I imagine this time around it's going to be very, very different.
I think it will be, because in some ways the 2008 debate was about breaking the glass ceiling and showing one could be competent enough for that job or other senior stature jobs of that type. And now she's demonstrated year after year after year that she has the talent, she has the skills, she has the toughness. And it's become less of a question of whether or not a woman could do the job. The question is whether she's the right candidate. So she can pull upon that now as a not quite foregone conclusion, but nearly.
But the reality is that while the women's vote can indeed work in her favour, it could also be her pitfall.
There was a Republican strategist last week who said, I don't, and I'm paraphrasing the exact quote, but she had said, I don't want to hear estrogen come out of Hillary's mouth every time I see her talk. There are few people, though, attacking her because she's a woman.
But Laurie, it could backfire if she's seen to be pandering to one half of the electorate as opposed to the other.
That's true. She has a constituency that is already leaning in her direction. In fact, the women's vote tends to overall lead towards the Democratic Party. But it breaks down, it cuts across all sorts of demographic. It cuts across college-educated women versus less than all college-level women. It cuts across economic classes. It cuts across age groups. And so she can't just take for granted that she automatically gets the full, complete women's vote. It's nuanced, and she has to demonstrate that she stands firm on the issues that those voters and other voters care about. The other nuance to keep in mind is we're talking about very, very small margins the last few elections between changing demographics in a few key states based on small thresholds of voter turnout. So we can't take an overall number of women in the country and assume that automatically goes towards a Hillary win.
So where does this leave the Republican Party? What are they doing to attract women voters?
The Republican Party has been trying to make inroads with women voters. I think they've actually been focusing more the last couple of years on trying to reach out to minority voters in particular. In part, that is because they are still struggling over how to talk about women's issues. At the core, they're struggling over how to talk about family values in a way that represents today's America, today's American families. So they have not yet caught the right rhetoric that is in sync with American women and American families today.
But it does appear at this stage that the Republicans don't have a front runner who's a woman.
It appears at this stage they have a crowded field, but we have not yet seen a woman candidate seriously put herself into the ring as a candidate. There has been talk of some senior business executives potentially fitting the descriptors of a good candidate, for example, Carly Fiorina, but we have not seen any candidate express their willingness to jump into the ring, and without one.
So is America ready for a woman president?
I think we're nearly there, and I hope this election turns that corner because it has been moving in that direction. We've seen the issues evolve forward. We've seen the candidates evolve forward. We've seen the numbers rise in Congress and at the local level of government, and great strides have been made. I think the presidency is the next challenge.
And is it going to make a difference if indeed the president happens to be a woman?
I don't think we'll see major changes in the governing agenda, but I think you'll see consistent support for women's issues that have already been percolating the last years: equal pay, childcare, and all sorts of social and healthcare issues. And it'll be very interesting when we're cutting our budget extensively, as are many other countries, to see where women's issues fall out.
Laurie Dunham, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Now to other news, and it's 1 year on since the kidnap of more than 200 schoolgirls by the Islamist group Boko Haram in northeastern Nigeria. The young women still remain unaccounted for. Now, to mark the anniversary, Nigerians took to the streets in the capital Abuja, with each person carrying a placard bearing a victim's name. And while the cry to bring back our girls still remains a worldwide cause, the country's new president won't repeat his predecessor's failed promise to find them, only saying that they will not be forgotten. And to China now, where police have released 5 feminist activists in a case that's prompted an international diplomatic outcry. The 5 women were arrested last month as they sought to distribute posters against sexual violence on International Women's Day. But despite their release, they still remain criminal suspects in the eyes of both the police and the Chinese judicial system, as Sanam Chantier reports.
These 5 feminist activists, held for more than a month, have been liberated from the confines of a Chinese detention centre, but their release is far from a victory. According to their lawyer Wang Zheng, Wu, Wei and Li were all freed on bail and are still considered suspects in the eyes of the judicial system. The women will be under surveillance for 12 months, with their movements restricted. Also, China's authorities can summon them for questioning at any time.
My client's conditional release means that this case is not yet over. These women could be detained again and taken back to the detention center in Beijing. They could also face charges soon. Anything can happen in the near future. So we, the lawyers, need to continue demanding that the police drops all charges against them.
Known for their colourful messages, the Feminist Five push back against the country's authorities. They were picked up by police on International Women's Day as they prepare to distribute pamphlets against domestic violence. And their release earlier this week, all at once, is unprecedented, a sign that an international outcry proved effective. While rights groups have welcomed the release of the activists, they say gender equality still has a long way to go in China.
I think the fact that these women are detained for trying to raise awareness about an issue that gets discussed in the public press and by the government, but still is so common and so chronic that it requires this kind of awareness raising, shows just how far both laws and enforcement of them has to go for women's rights in China.
The question now is whether these women and other feminist activists will curb their activities out of fear.
And that's it for now. And if you'd like to comment what you've just seen, you can head to our Facebook page. That's France 24, full stop, the 51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far, and please keep those comments rolling in. Until our next program, bye for now.